Thank you so much. So I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine. His name is David Gregory. He was the NBC correspondent for the White House in the George W. Bush years, and then he became the moderator for the Sunday political program, Meet the Press. David and I got to know each other through a study group that we formed for journalists and opinion shapers and novelists, and we studied together with David Brooks from the New York Times and Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic and Daniel Silver, a number of other students, and it was always a party. Anyway, David once said to me, "Erica, I'd like you to be on Meet the Press." I said, "David, I'm so deeply touched. I am really honored." And he gave me the date, and I said, "I'm so sorry. I can't come. It's the second days of Passover." And he said, "What are the second days of Passover?" And then he said, "You mean to tell me that that is more important than Meet the Press?" And I said, "To me, David, it's more important than being on Meet the Press." And I guess there's two ways of viewing that decision, one of rejection or one of conviction. And I like to think that conviction was actually what cemented our relationship in studying in the years ahead. Conviction is really important, and what I want to talk about is authenticity as an ethical issue. So we're going to meet a rapper that you know about, Matisyahu, and his conversation with Jimmy Kimmel in 2007, understanding that he's taken a slightly different path.
And what sort of things like can't you do? Are there restrictions on you because of your religion that might not be on someone else who's
Yeah, I
doing
mean, there's certain things that I can't do. I can't perform Friday night on Shabbos. I can't perform, and
what if it's a really good gig offer?
still can't do it.
Let's say $1 million.
Can't do it. No.
$2 million.
$2 million. No.
Let me bump it up to $4 million.
$4 million? Well, no.
For $4 million, you'll think about it.
All right, so $4 million wasn't going to get him to say yes. And I think that for us in this room, when we think about ethical issues in the workplace, there are a variety of them. Hold on. Favoritism, nepotism, harassment, social media abuse, misuse of funds. But for many of the people in this room, one of the things that you're thinking a lot about, I imagine, is religious discrimination. Will I be discriminated against, whether through anti-Semitism or someone not accepting my observance as an Orthodox Jew? And I want to turn to Rabbi Sachs, my mentor and teacher, for advice that he gave in a pamphlet on business that he wrote many years ago when he was a sir before he was a lord. He was asked, is it acceptable to withhold certain information when I apply or recruit for a position? And he said, provide honest and accurate information to potential employers' employees and avoid knowingly making false or inaccurate statements. Now, of course, you want to be hired because you're a person of integrity and dignity and a person who tells the truth, certainly the truth about yourself. When we think about religious discrimination, we sometimes project what other people will think about us when what we're actually thinking about is how we show up in the workplace. Do we feel comfortable being people of conviction? Do we have the courage of conviction to tell someone who we are? And when we don't, how will we continue to work as authentic individuals? A divided house cannot stand. I want to take you, actually, to the first person who had to deal with, I'll say it's the first person who had to deal with workplace issues as an Orthodox Jew, and that is the prophet Daniel. In the first chapter of the Sefer Daniel, Daniel is taken as a captive. He's a young, noble Yerushalmi. He comes from Jerusalem. He's taken in captivity to Bavel, to Babylonia with Nebuchadnezzar, and he's told that he needs to drink from the king's wine and eat from the king's meal. And he tells the officer who supervises him and his colleagues that he's not willing to do that. He's not willing to defile himself. And he makes a deal with the officer. He says, if myself and the young men who are with me give us 10 days of legumes and water, and if we cannot perform our tasks as everyone else, obviously to have another conversation. 10 days goes by, legumes galore, water galore, and the faces of these young men shone, it says in this chapter. They were healthy and nourished and flourishing, more so than anyone else in the king's court. There you have it, in chapter 1 of Daniel, a guidebook, a playbook for what it means to actually say very early on in your job, even in a king's house, in a king's castle, this is who I am, and I can't compromise that. For most of the people in this room, in the years ahead, if not in the months ahead, when you walk across the stage, you're going to cross another stage, the stage of professional ambition and the financial ambition that often accompanies it. You'll think about getting promoted, you'll think about your education, what you need to get where you want to go, who you need to network with, and you might have financial ambitions that come along with that, and those financial ambitions might grow. Where you want to live, what kind of house you want to have, what kind of car you want to drive. And we came here to Yeshiva University, myself as a Stern graduate, because we wanted to prolong the period of time where we stayed within a Jewish calendar, where we felt supported in our learning, supported in our prayers, supported in the Orthodox lives that we lead. But now we're getting to that next stage where these questions become the question of how I'm going to live in a work environment which I'm not necessarily prepared for. So what I'd like to suggest is that we add one more circle to this, and it's the defining circle. It's spiritual ambition. I want to think about that term. We talked about conviction, but now I want to give you sort of what I think is a recipe. It's an important recipe for business success, is to actually name what are my spiritual ambitions in the years ahead. Now, I don't only have professional ambitions. I don't only have financial ambitions. In fact, my financial ambitions should ultimately serve the spiritual ambitions I have for myself. So, here are a few recommendations. Number one, before you take your first serious job, make a list of your spiritual ambitions. You know how it is when it comes to religious life. Being neutral is a regressive state. We need to constantly grow and challenge ourselves, deepen our relationships, deepen our midot, deepen our tefillah, deepen our learning. So make a list of your spiritual ambitions, and then do a quarterly check. Put that in your iCal, in your Google Calendar, in your Outlook, for all the months ahead, to do a quarterly spiritual check. And alongside that, make sure that you're meeting with a rabbi, an educator, a role model for you, a religious role model for you, a mentor for you, and make sure that you check in with them as well. And then, when you're feeling a little bit more confident, share the beauty of Judaism with your colleagues. Who doesn't need a digital detox? It's always astonishing to me when I speak to colleagues, non-Jewish colleagues or non-religious colleagues, and they say, you don't really put your phone away for 25 hours, do you? I said, I absolutely do. And they are astonished. One person said to me, well, I can't do that because I have a lot of important emails to write. And I said, me too. So in thinking about this, I want to close with a story that I came across. A friend showed me a lot of the posts of a young lawyer named Eli Albrecht. And Eli was asking himself the question that was posed earlier. When interviewing for jobs, should he wear his kippah? And his mentors told him, if you wear kippah to interview, you'll never get hired. He swallowed hard, he pulled it off his head, and he stuffed it in his pocket. But his son saw him take a Zoom meeting and take off his kippah. And his young son said, Dad, why aren't you wearing a kippah? And he answered his son and said, I don't know. And he said, I'm asking my son to be unapologetically proud to be Jewish. And what is this saying to him? And what is it saying to me? So he decided to wear his kippah. And he, not only to wear his kippah, but he realized that when he claimed his Jewish life, it enabled other people from different ethnic backgrounds, from different cultural backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, to claim their lives as well, and their differences. For me, he said, I'm going to start wearing my kippah. For you, it may be your faith, your country of origin, or something else. But don't stuff it in your pocket. Our Judaism is so beautiful. It's so foundational. It's such a treasure. Let's not stuff it in a pocket. Thank you.